Good evening, viewers, and welcome back to another Capture Live webcast. Today we are going to be following up with a last episode of our mini-series of What's New in Capture 2023. Sorry, 2022. Yeah, we're not in 2023 yet. So I've prepared a little list of things that I want to show you in 2022. I also have a few backup questions from the last webcast we did in the event that you don't have any questions. Which brings me to, please do send us your questions, type them in the chat next to me, and my colleague will relay your questions to me, and I'll try to answer them. If you have questions about the stuff I am just showing you, then I will try to answer them as we go. If you have questions about other things in Capture, I will try to put them in between the things I want to show you. But please, if you have questions, do post them right away. Don't sit on them because it takes a little while before they reach me. So there's a bit of a delay there. This is likely this is the last webcast before the traditional Swedish summer vacations. We have a tradition in Sweden of 4 weeks of vacation in July for whatever historical reasons we have here. And then we will be back again in August after that. Emiliano is making a remark here that we shouldn't try to charge for next year in advance. That's a great idea. Thank you for that. We will incorporate that in our next business meeting. So I'm going to dive straight into Capture, start showing you things, and I then hope you start spamming me with questions on the side. So let's switch to the Capture view. Of course, the stuff I've got left now in the third episode are possibly on the esoteric side, but that doesn't mean that they're not important or really useful for someone. So we're going to start with the line snapper, speaking about esoteric stuff. So the line snapper is something that we can add from the library, and it starts as a line, and at the ends of the line you will see a little cross indicating the end. We can double click on the cross to edit the line, just like we're used to with dimensions or cables for that matter. The purpose of the snappers in the library is to let you build stuff that snaps together. So this could be things like chairs that snap together, you know, chairs that have this hook system. So yeah, that probably has a proper name that I don't know. Or if you have some other kind of special construction where things fit together. We use line snappers ourselves for building custom truss pieces where you want fixtures to be hung on the line snapper as if it was a pipe. So if you have a line snapper and a point snapper, then obviously the point snapper snaps to the line. If we have a directional snapper, then not only does it snap to the line, it also adjusts the line so that it's orthogonal. Sorry, it adjusts the directional snapper so that it's orthogonal. So if I have it tilted here a few degrees and snap it to the line, you can see that it straightens out. And that's in fact the system that you would see when fixtures snap to trusses. So if you've got a tilted moving head snapping to a piece of truss, then it straightens out as it snaps to the truss. As you may know, we have a system in snappers that is called match. And this lets you say that one snapper only snaps to a specific set of other snappers. So if you have that conference chair system where they hook together, you might give them a specific match like chair, so that only chairs snap together with chairs. And if you have worked with snappers before, you may know that there are some special reserved matches that lets you snap things together with other library items. And there is one that is particularly interesting for the line snapper, and that's the fixture match. So if we type fixture in here and we grab a fixture from the library, I'm back to using Mac 2000s again. So if I now move this towards the line, let's maybe tilt it a little bit first. Then you will see that when I snap this, it doesn't work. So that's a bit weird. Let's see. This is terribly awkward. Why doesn't this work? Did I miss something? Is the match fixtures? Although I tried this before? No. Well, that's disappointing. Fixture with a capital F. Yes, there we have it. All right. This is written in the manual. If you don't want to take your chances, you can read in the manual what it's supposed to be. So again, if we have a fixture here, this now snaps to the line snapper and automatically orients the fixture so that it fits the line snapper. Great if you are building some very specific custom objects. Now let's see if we have a few questions here before I move on. I'll just shoot a few very quick answers. Emiliano is asking if it is possible to open MVR files with Capture Mobile. The answer is no. I doubt that will happen either, because you would need to have the capture library in place as well in order to have fixture definitions, so doubtful. And Emiliano is also, sorry, Radio Loss is asking whether there will ever be an Android version of Capture Mobile. I think at the moment the answer is on some kind of semi-short horizon, the answer is no. Maybe at some point in the future, but there are no plans for that here and now at least. Right, now I'm going to move on to measurements. Now in the last webcast I showed you the new measure mode and some new measurement properties, but there is one more that I want to show you specifically. So let's start with taking a measurement. Let's use the nice measure mode we have. So here we have ourselves a distance measurement, and it reads 2.92 meters. If you remember how this used to work before 2022, you know that it would have read 2 meters 92 centimeters or 2 meters 921 millimeters or something like that. But that is a change we did in 2022, that we don't show these mixed properties anymore. We use only one unit. So it says 2.92 something meters. Now something that's new in 2022 is that you can actually override and choose which unit you want it to be. The default is a sort of automatic setting, but you could force it to millimeters, for instance. And this works in combination with a precision option, which isn't new, but is perhaps more meaningful together with the new unit option. So this applies a rounding to the textual description of the measurement. So this way you can force the measures to be shown in a more specific way that suits your needs, as these vary around the world and there is no proper standard for what it should look like anyway. So, no specific questions on what I've shown you so far. I'll just shoot a general question in between. Boris is asking about whether we could show something about synchronizing capture with consoles and specifically the EOS console. I believe we have a tutorial-ish video on some ETC EOS integration already. The truth is not much has happened between capture and consoles in general for some time, so it would feel like we would just shoot the same video again. So please go and check the videos we already have, even though they are a few years old. I doubt there's much difference. But maybe it's time to review that and see if we should indeed shoot something again. So I'm going to move on to groups. We did some pretty major changes to the way groups work in 2022. I'm going to apply a little filter here and build a couple of groups to show you. Now I'm just going to do something super simple with boxes. I know sometimes my presentations are a little bit boring in terms of the objects we use, but it's the principle that matters, right? So let's kill the measurement we did. Now I'm going to just lay out 3 boxes here and group them together. The first thing I would point out is this little crosshair that has appeared, and this marks the center of the group. This is the geometric center, and it has been computed automatically when I created the group. This crosshair is also where the XYZ position is measured from. Before 2022, the XYZ coordinates here were not actually of the group, but all of the objects. But as of 2022, the actual group by itself now has a position. So if I change this to -2 meters, that's where the crosshair of the group is now. Another change as to before is that if I now double click on one of these objects, I'm drilling down into the group, and now I've actually selected a box, which means I get the properties of the box here now. So when the group itself is selected, we don't get, well, actually this isn't quite true, we still get a lot of properties, but it's important to keep in mind that the coordinate here and even the unit is actually that of the group. So if I type group here, the text group appears, but where the group is and not once in every box as it was up until 2021. And it's not just the position, right? So if I rotate the group, I'm also rotating the group as such, which means that the rotation angles are that of the group. So that is also different from before then. Now, sometimes, especially if you're working with scenery on stage over multiple scenes, then you have a need to add something to a group. And users used to then break a group and recreate the group. The thing though is that if I do that now, if I break this group and create a group again, then that coordinate and the angle is lost because that was associated with the group that I had. So if I undo back here, so I'm back again with the original group. What you can do is if you add an object, Using the drag and drop or quick copy button, the third one here, I can now drag and drop it onto the group. Yeah, if my hand was a little bit less shaky, I could do that. There. And now I've added the new box to the existing group. This means that the group itself retains the coordinate and the angle. And this is particularly useful if you have recorded positions in multiple scenes. So let's place the objects on stage right in the default scene. Let's switch to the new scene without forgetting to actually include the objects in the scene. So let's switch to new scene, move them to stage left. And as you can see, we've got the objects in two different locations. If I now add something to this group, if I add one more box, I add it to the group, I go back to the scenes and change to the other scene, you will see that the newly added box now tracks the location of the group. So this lets you create constructions on stage that hide, unhide, or change locations, and you can modify them, add stuff into the group. You can also delete an object within a group, or even break it out of the group, which means the object still exists, but it's no longer part of the group, making it a lot easier to work with objects across scenes. In addition to this, the include in scenes property here always applies to all of the objects in the group. So if I have a group that it's included in scenes, then anything I put in the group is automatically included in the scenes. So there's no risk of forgetting that, which was a real risk up until Capture 2021. It is also the case that if I associate the group with a motion fixture, I have specifically added one here, then automatically all the objects in that group are also associated with the motion fixture. So if I take this box here now that I took out of the group and put it back into the group, then it's moving with that motion fixture. So as you can see, there's been some evolution on how groups work and how we can work with them across multiple scenes, which I realize not everyone does, but if you do that kind of stuff, then it's really important. So let's see if we have some question here. Emiliano is applauding the group changes, so thank you. Julian Yamin writes, sometimes when mirroring objects imported into Capture, the mirror image is not exact and with certain offsets. Is this avoidable? Now, I think we might have needed a specific example project file to have a look at. The one thing to keep in mind in Capture when you mirror things is that it's not like a mirror in a CAD that sort of flips something like you would flip a burger or a pancake, because that doesn't actually work in reality. So Capture only moves and rotates objects, which comes with some limitations, but also prevents you from breaking the laws of physics. So if you have a specific project file, Yamin, Julian, where something like this happens, then mail us at support@Capture, and we should be able to explain in a little bit more detail what happens in your project file. Emiliano also wrote something about reflective surfaces, that is our reflection planes, whether we could allow a larger number of reflection planes. There is an internal limit. I mean, they are very heavy on performance, so supporting more reflection planes is probably something that wouldn't work out in the end anyway. It's not a piece of functionality that we've received a terrible amount of feedback on, that people would like better performance with large numbers of reflection planes. There are also situations where overlapping reflection planes create visualization issues that are really hard for us to work around. So I wouldn't wait up late for those tremendous amounts of reflection planes. It's probably not going to happen in the near future. Boris commented on a previous questions about, I believe, communication with ETC EOS, that the video we didn't cover position sync, but only patch. So we'll take a look at that and maybe bring that in another webcast. And with that, I will move on and we will take a look at some changes we did to the universe view. So in 2022, we introduced two modes to the view, the channels and the fixture modes. The channels mode is the one that is most similar to what we had before. One of the differences is that we removed the line that tried to write out the name of the channel, because by the end of the day, we could only fit a few characters, and usually that wasn't nearly enough anyway. And it really bloated the size of the view. So the new look is more compact. Another thing that is very much new here is the way we treat fixture overlap. So if I patch a few overlapping fixtures here, you can see that they build up this stack. And what used to happen was that this stack covered the information in the next row, which no longer happens. And perhaps most importantly, if I patch multiple fixtures on the same channel, let's do this instead, then they don't stack. So in this case, I've actually got 3 GLX spots on the same channel, but it just shows as a single bar with a plus. So this has increased readability by quite a lot. Then we have the fixtures mode, that rather than looking at the 512 DMX channels, looks at the fixtures one by one and its parameters. So this, in a way, is a complement to the control pane we have here, in that we can actually modify the channels in here, or parameters. So if I run the, tilt first, then pan. So if I run pan and tilt, you can see what happens here. And this way you also get access to a few features that don't actually exist in the control pane. Now ideally, we would have everything in the control pane, but it's not always the case. Well, then it's quite useful to have direct access to the parameters here. It's also very useful if you find yourself in a situation where you're wondering why a fixture isn't doing what you think it should be doing, then it's much easier now to see which parameters might be set to a value that you don't want them to be. Yes, and one more thing I would like to point out in here is that, and especially maybe for 16-bit parameters, you can make fine adjustments by holding the Shift key, which then moves the slider much slower. So if we change to DMX values here, it's probably hard to see, but by holding the Shift key, you can actually hit individual values in a way that you couldn't otherwise. Bernat asked a question in relation to the dimensioning and the measures. He's asking whether there's a way to measure a curve. The answer to that, unfortunately, is no. You cannot really do that. You could create a multi-point measure that sort of follows a curve. So by holding the Shift key, you could do something like this, but it's not really what you're after, I suppose. but it's the closest you could get anyway. Perhaps in the future we could add that. Before we leave the magic world of the universes, I also want to point out that we've changed the default naming of the universes. This is an old project file, which is why the names are ABCD. But if I start a new file, you will see that the names are now 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is now the new naming convention in Capture. Now, if you prefer the alphabetic naming, you can of course still edit the name and change it to whatever you want it to be. It doesn't affect the way universes connect with your console or anything like that. It only really affects the textual information in the paperwork. So in this file where I have the alphabetic naming, if I now change the name of the universe to 1, it says 111 instead of A11. And that's really everything that changes here. And we've added a function. So when you hit the plus button here, you can now add multiple universes. So if you need 200 universes in a go and you don't want to hit the add button 200 times, you can use this little feature to do that. Mind you though, that if you are doing that because you intend to patch 200 universes of RGB pixels, then you should probably be using our texture generator instead, because the performance of 200 universes of RGB pixels is not the best, because it's a massive amount of pictures. So, having said that, it's now a lot easier to add loads and loads of universes. Again, if you have questions, do write them in the chat. I suppose we are in the final stretch of the webcast soon. So it's last chance to shoot your questions and have them answered tonight. And I actually only have one thing left on my list that I wanted to show you. And that was the library symbols category. So we've always had this category with fixture symbols, and somewhere in the middle you will find generic, which has some non-brand symbol. And this category used to contain a bunch of other symbols that were a bit hidden, so we decided to have a special category called symbols that contains those. Here you will find a few symbols for various accessories. We have a few connector type symbols, extras, some house information like a guy falling down a huge hole in the stage. Very good. Sightline warning, some power outlet symbols, and of course our rigging points, which I believe are also available under built-in, because these also function with reports in a very specific way. If you need other symbols than we have here in the library, you can, or we would appreciate if you emailed us and let you know what kind of symbols you frequently use that are missing, and we will be happy to work on that. However, it's also worth pointing out that another new feature in 2022 that I believe we covered in the first video here after the release is that you can add your own symbols by importing them from an SVG file. So that is really useful if you don't want to wait for us to add something to the library. Radio Loss is asking, how can I assign multiple zone like with a LED processor? I guess I don't really have a good answer to that. LED processors are not an area where we've managed to do a lot of great stuff in Capture yet. I think you would need to create multiple texture generators, one per DMX universe, and stitch them together like that. I guess that's all I can say about that at the moment. Again, you might want to reach out to us at support@capture.se in case we can give you some more specific advice based on what exactly it is you're doing. Emiliano is asking in relation to the WWDC, which is Apple's developer conference, which just ended. He's asking whether there are any changes in metal that we could take advantage of. And we've had a brief look, and there might be. I would say that, if there are meaningful, good improvements, then of course we will be using them. We keep an eye on these things, so it's not like they go unnoticed. So if there's good stuff there, then I'm sure we will be picking it up. I haven't or don't remember when exactly the new metal stuff will be out. I guess it's with the next Mac OS version after summer. So yeah, it might take a little bit of time until all the systems are compatible too. Julian Yamin is asking whether we could see fixture information in the library. At the moment, this is not possible. You would need to add the fixture into the design before you can do that. Sustain VT says that plug boxes are missing in as symbols in the library, and this is quite true. We would like to do something more intelligent with plug boxes and cabling in a future version. But we should probably look into just at least adding some plug box symbols until then. So well pointed out. Emiliano is following up on the Apple Metal question about HDR. So the one thing Apple are bringing to iPadOS is HDR support for Metal applications, which we will be enabling as fast as possible when that iOS version is out. Actually, it's strictly speaking not a new Metal feature, I guess. It's more of a, yeah, that's getting very detailed, but we have everything in place, obviously, from the macOS app, so it's just a matter of enabling it once it works. And finally, last question for LX Design. And I believe this is a request for more symbols, and that's power outlet with DMX information. Now we do have a few power outlets already. However, they do lack, I believe, any DMX information, so you would need to enter that as the text here. But you can do that. So it's worth knowing that if you drag an illustration into the design, you can add your own text to that, which is an annotation that you can move around as well. So it's just as with the fixtures or other objects in the library, you can still add textual annotations to these symbols. So here you could easily add some DMX information. Of course, it doesn't show up like a fixture in a report. In that case, a workaround might be to use some kind of omnidirectional fixture, or even just a generic Fresnel or whatever to get the symbol and input DMX information that ends up in the report. But I was thinking you could do something like this, and then choose a symbol that suits you, like maybe the, I don't know, Ethernet is a bad example, but let's take a DMX connector, associate that with a fixture. Let's patch it. Let's say universe D channel 34. And now we've actually got something that is, in a sense, DMX patched and even shows up on reports. So this could be a way of adding outlets or other kinds of connectors with a DMX address in this case. So with that, I think we've managed in this little series to cover nearly all the new features in Capture 2022. I'd like to thank you all for watching, and spending some time with us tonight, or as you watch this maybe after the fact. We will be back again after summer with more webcasts. If you have suggestions for us of things you would like us to cover, then you can always write to us at support@capture.se, or catch us on social media like Twitter or Facebook, or even occasionally Instagram or LinkedIn for that matter. So thank you again, and have a great summer, and see you soon again.